This is why I moved to San Francisco. This is the groundbreaking ceremony for the SF MoMA. And I saw that in an underground video store in New York City in 1994, and I thought I gotta get into that. And I came here because I wanted to join survival research labs, but it turned out there were a bunch of meth heads, and I didn't do that. So, but and they didn't want me either. But this is another thing that was happening in San Francisco. Kart races made out of power tools. And they were wicked fast. And eventually, after, you'll notice that they totally just get beat up at the end. And after a while, we realized we need to put some padding at the back. You see they're attached to power cords along the way. It's totally ghetto. And then we used to do this here. This is a band called Rue Boisdel. There was a shoe store a block away from here on Mission Street called Leeds Shoe Store, and they had a Live at Leeds performance about every Friday night for about 6 or 7 years in the Mission. And regularly on the sidewalk, about 200 people would gather, drinking beer and listening to these guys do their homemade instruments, and it was super fun. All the music was about pirates and about failed Antarctic expeditions, and it was really good. But all that is gone. None of that is in San Francisco anymore. And for a while I had a really hard time with that, and I kind of mourned it and kind of wondered what I was doing here. And what I've come to, and what I want to talk to this group about, because this is the nexus of where this change is happening, is the story that we tell ourselves about what's happening in San Francisco and about what to do about that. Because I can't stay in mourning for survival research labs and the power tool drag races forever. So, what do we do, right? So I think the way that we talk about this has to really acknowledge this idea of this kind of confluence of art and tech and cities and money. These are things that are inextricably linked in this city, especially in this place. And it's not the easiest conversation to have, but if we don't have it, the arts are not going to have a real place at the table moving forward, and they're going to go the way of the power tool drag races and survival research labs. And I don't want to do that. So I think that what we have to do is to talk about money in the arts, and we have to talk about commitment to place, because if we don't, then the arts are going to be a bit player in this city in 20 years, and I love it here too much to let that happen. It's just not enough to move to the fringes anymore. That cycle of moving into lower income neighborhoods and then being in there for a little while and then having the yuppies come in and take over is just not good enough anymore. So luckily, we're here in a good place to talk about this, and I just have to say I'm totally blown away to be standing in a movie theater on Mission Street. I mean, this is totally amazing what's going on right in this place. It's really, I just can't believe it. So what I want to talk about is how we do art in a boom, because we have to do art in a boom. We can't just stop. It's not going to work. And so what I want to talk about is some work that I've been doing to try to engage in this space, to talk about some work that others have been doing to engage in this, and to talk about why this is not just important for San Francisco, but for cities in general and for art in general. So this place, as I understand it, there's a 10-year lease, which is amazing to think that this is still going to be here in 2025. And the landlord is friendly and interested in gray area and is interested in the selling. And that's totally spectacularly great. That is a different way of engaging with art and the city than was happening in San Francisco at the community before. And I think what it does is it's a little wiggly up here, sorry. What it does is it starts to break this cycle that started in Soho in the 60s when artists moved into derelict spaces and took them over, and then the yuppies moved in and now it became a fancy place. This idea that, and I think there's some kind of dichotomies that we set up when we talk about the arts, is that the community means that you're poor, that there's no way for money to do anything other than reinforce the status quo, and that to do art means you need to live in poverty. And I think it's time to stop that dichotomy and move forward. This is the place that's happening, and I think that it's time to start talking about permanent homes in the city for art and for artists, so that we're not on the fringes anymore, and so that we're not pushed out. We want to be able to control our destiny and our environment. So I want to start with a few organizations that are working specifically in the arts to address this, and then talk about some work that I've been doing. So this is a group called Art Home. They're in New York City. They help artists, artists in particular, buy houses so that they don't get moved. Just that basic thing of like, where do I live and do art? These guys these people are working on that. There's a number of other ways that this kind of stuff is happening. This is in Milwaukee, and a group of neighbors got together, formed an investment corporation. You could buy shares for as little as $1,000, and they pooled their resources and they bought a bunch of building, and now they're renting to bakers and brewers. This isn't art specific, but it's the kind of thing that can happen, and it's the kind of thing that is happening. And then the one that got me really excited when I started to hear about this, I've been talking with the National Endowment for the Arts about this, Laura Cullinan is doing a great job there, is this thing called Noteworthy Federal Credit Union. And it's in Cleveland, and what it does is it lets the artists that are in the Cleveland Orchestra leverage the value of their musical instruments to buy property. So you have a $80,000 French horn, $50,000 French horn, a $20,000 French horn, whatever it is, you can get a $20,000 loan, put that on a place, and buy a place. Right, so this, and I think this is the conversation, well, I keep saying I think, this is the conversation that I'm having and that I want to have, is how do we, and artists and people who are engaged in creative artwork, leverage the capital that we have instead of just being broke all the time, because it's not working. The city of San Francisco is doing what it can to help here. Amy Cohen at the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development has a plan called Invest in Neighborhoods, and they've identified a bunch of neighborhoods that the city is willing to provide assistance with for artists and others. That is Amy's email address and her phone number. She knows that I've got this. She knows that she's anyway. She knows you're going to call her. Yep, what I want to say is that it can be done. It doesn't, this story of loss, the story of having to leave, the story of being pushed out by rapacious developers, it's not the only story. And it's a story that I'm tired of and I'm bored of, and I'm working to fix it. And I'd like to help. So moving on to work that I've been doing, I was lucky enough to meet a woman through Stamen named Jen Rainin, who invited me to be on the board of her foundation, the Kenneth Rainin Foundation, and we do a lot of work in the Bay Area supporting performing arts. And we started doing a bunch of listening to figure out what artists needed beyond kind of individual grants, and the real need that we started to hear was that artists needed space. They needed space to live, space to work. So we established the Community Arts Stabilization Trust about 2 years ago. You can find out about it at cast-sf.org. And what we're doing is buying buildings in San Francisco and finding arts groups to be in them, and then finding ways for those arts groups to buy the buildings back from us. And then we turn around and we do it again. So we've been working with Amy Cohen at the mayor's office. This is the zone that we're mainly thinking about, although we're realizing that we have to start thinking about San Francisco too. Start thinking about the Mission too. And we need to start thinking about Oakland also. And so if you're interested in finding out about that stuff, please let me know. The place that we kind of came to is that we can't invest outside of the Central Arts District in downtown San Francisco right now, but we can advise on other projects. We've bought 2 buildings, and we're working on a couple more. So the first building is at 1007 Market Street. You might know it as the Luggage Store. They are an awesome group. They've been there for a long time. What they did is they rented their space for a long time, and then they bought a small piece of the building from the landlord. They basically They invested some amount of money in this, and then they started looking around for another founder. So we come along and basically bought the rest of that building, and now we are the luggage store's landlord, and they're in the process of buying the building back from us. And so the idea that there's like a friendly landlord like Luggage Store has here that can help the artists stay because it's part of our mission. The Luggage Store does this other amazing thing in the Tenderloin. This is an alley off of Ellis Street, the way it looked about 20 years ago. Just nothing going on there that you want to be involved with. They came in, the founders of the Luggage Store came in and rolled turf down on the street one day as an art project just to see. And the project took off. Eventually they planted a redwood tree in the middle of the pavement and got a gate on the front of it, and now it's the Tenderloin National Forest. And it's an extraordinary space. I really encourage you to go down there and figure it out, and find out more about this. It's kind of a joke and it's a little bit of a nod and a wink, but if you go there, it's a gorgeous, fantastic, amazing place. It's open to everybody. They bake pizzas. They've literally cracked open the asphalt and taken this space. They have a 99-year lease from the city, which they expect to have renewed. And this idea of a 99-year lease is this just amazing idea, right? Because it's far enough away that people now are just going to be like, it's like global warming, like we don't have to deal with it for a long time. So, so this idea, and so when I see this, when I see that this is possible, I mean, when you look at the difference between this, which is the status quo, and this, which is what's there now, with with people playing, and there's murals and there's gardens, and it's just this incredible space. If you look at it from the roof, it looks like that. It's just phenomenal. So we need more of that stuff, and in order to do that, we need people who are willing to occupy space. And this is artwork. This is people who came in from nothing and turned a derelict alley into something that they could inhabit and that they could express themselves in. The redwood. This was taken a couple years ago. The redwood tree is bigger than the buildings now. So that's cool. The other project that we just started construction on is in the Tenderloin also, and it's at 80 Turk Street. It is also a former theater that showed a different kind of movie for a long time. And then it fell into disrepair and was used as an illegal rave space in the ground floor, and it was a grow house on the top floor up until about 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, it looked like that. Just a total fucking wreck. I mean, like it was a disaster, and it was scary to walk down Turk Street. So what we've done is we've bought the building, and we're working with a group called Counterpulse, which is a really interesting theater group. They were in South of Market for a long time, and now they're moving into that space. Construction started on that project about 2 months ago, and they expect to be ready sometime in the fall. And it's a full production facility. It's about the same size as this, maybe a little narrower, but it's got 3 floors. So there's a floor above for apartments and for administrative spaces. There's a giant theater downstairs, and then there's rehearsal space, which is a crucial thing that I hope Gray Area can also help to ameliorate. It's just this lack of rehearsal space in the city. So this is permanent. They are in there. They have 7 years to buy it back from us. We're helping them. They've raised a capital campaign, which we've contributed to, and others have. It's a really vital thing, and no one is ever going to be able to take that building away from them. And this is what I'm really trying to get at here, is that this is not a temporary solution. This isn't a Band-Aid fix. It's not funding a program. It's about locking them in forever. So I want to talk a little bit about how this starts, and then how it can leverage itself. So we started with a $5 million grant from the Kenneth Raindon Foundation, which is great, and bought buildings, right? So thank you, Jen Raindon. But here's the thing, and I just want to talk about the finances of it for a second. And I don't know if you guys noticed, I'm wearing I got a dollar sign on my belt buckle today. We were saying that if I should hook it up to my bank account, and so that every time money comes into it, it like spins, and then the sparks shoot out while I'm here on the stage. Okay, so we didn't actually get $5 million. We got the promise of $5 million over 5 years. So we got $500,000 to start, and then we got a promissory note, took that to the bank, for $5 million over the next 5 years, and that got us a mortgage. That basically means we could take out loans, which lets us buy these 2 buildings. And then to help the artists buy them. And so we can use that money. And this whole process is helping us raise money. So we've gotten money from Packard, from Hewlett, San Francisco Foundation, a couple others. It's been really incredible to see that kind of outpouring. And what we're telling them is that real estate, holding the real estate is key if you want to do this and if you want to get permanent about this, because it lets you leverage the asset. It turns it into, look, I can't believe I just said leverage the asset. It lets you leverage what you've got, right? You've got something that people know that you're committed to this place, and then you're not just some art flunky, you're somebody with a building. So there's 2 mechanisms that we've used to extend this work and to raise more money, and I just want to talk about 2 of them really quick. The first one is called new market tax credits, which is this amazing mechanism that I had no idea about, and I felt like when I learned about this that somebody had opened the door and showed me like how the world actually works. There are these zones that are called new market zones. I think they're called economic opportunity zones, something like that. They're set up by the federal government. They have distinct geographic boundaries, and they last for 10 years. And if you do work that benefits the community, like art, in those spaces, if you invest money into those zones, the federal government will write you a check for 20% of the money that you invest. They will write you a check. It's not a tax break. They give you money. You invest $1,000 there, they will write you a check for $200. Now, it's actually not quite true. It has to be quite a bit larger than that because the paperwork is a nightmare because it's the federal government. But once you get to the scale of real estate, suddenly you invest $1 million in a building and the government writes you a check for $200,000, which is a lot of art. So that's important. The other thing about real estate that I've figured out, or that we figured out, I should say, there's a lot of other people working on this, and one of them is my colleague Moy Eng is going to be on a panel with Peter Hirschberg this afternoon about the new Medicis, is this thing called transfer of development rights. And this is how it works. So you buy a building, it's 2 stories high, and in a lot of places in San Francisco, the zoning has changed since those buildings, especially downtown, was done, especially if they're older buildings, which are the kind of buildings that you can afford to buy if you're doing this kind of stuff. So you're allowed to build 2 stories higher than that on the block that you are. And so what you can do is if you own the building, is that if there's a building going in next door to you or on your block or within a certain radius, you can sell your 2 stories to that builder. So you basically say, I'm not going to build on my spot, and you can build 2 stories higher, which is worth money, which basically means you can sell the air above your building. Which has artistic precedent. So I'm starting to think about this as an art project, right? I mean, this is like creating something from nothing. There's precedent here for artists to think this way. So what I would encourage you to take away from this is that the point here is to engage with this issue. CAST has done this, Gray Area has done this, these other organizations are doing it. There are ways to dig in, there are ways to commit to a place, there are ways to stay. These mechanisms exist, and there are people who are out there ready to help. Art needs a seat at the table. It's a part of the vital mix. I know we all believe that because we're here. But what I want to say is that there's a way for art to take a real meaningful stake in the conversation and to be a stakeholder in a permanent way. Thank you. Thanks very much.